Hi there. Today I have the pleasure of talking with incredibly versatile vocalist Catherine Russell. She's a multi-Grammy-winning jazz vocalist and has also toured and recorded with some of the top names in the music business, including Steely Dan, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Kooper, and David Bowie. She's great. Enjoy. This series was conducted in the spring of 2020 via Instagram, and the audio and video quality do reflect that format. However, the words and insights of these guests are still priceless. Catherine Russell is a multi-Grammy-winning singer. She has over 180 recording credits and has toured and recorded with people such as Steely Dan, Cyndi Lauper, Kooper and the Recuperators, Madonna, and David Bowie, and many, many more, but we'll spend all day doing this. But aside from that, she's most recently and maybe most well known to most people as one of the top jazz vocalists on the scene today, with 7 solo albums to her credit. It's very impressive, Catherine.
Well, you got to do something with your life. So, I'm trying to stay with it, trying to stay out there.
Yeah. And the thing that makes Tamaris, there's a lot of feedback, but
there is. Can
you go a little quieter too? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to hear you. Maybe it's because if I is that better?
I think that's better.
Yeah, I had a thing, but this is on a music stand, so I had things behind it.
All right. Well, we'll keep trying it. You grew up in an incredible musical family. Your father worked with the, arguably the father of jazz.
One of them, yes.
Yeah, right. So your house was all about music growing up.
Yeah. But my dad passed when I was 7 years old. So, most of his career, he had really retired from the music business by 1949, 1950, something like that, when the big bands, the decline of the big band era.
Right.
But his career was really at the point where jazz, blues, and swing meet. So that was the whole thing about his orchestra, back in the 20s. And he was a young man. He came over from Panama in 1921 when he was 19. And then by 1926, 27, he had one of the hottest swing bands in Harlem. So, he didn't waste any time.
Yeah, he was in there. I always ask about this stuff, and I tend to ask everybody the same kind of questions when we start, because I feel like this music that we hear in our young years really forms who we become. And not just the music that your parents were playing, but you fell in love with some country music too. And where did that come from?
I like music that I like the sound of. So I know this sounds funny, but I used to watch Hee Haw when I was a kid. So I was kind of a variety show junkie when I was a kid. So I watched everything.
There was some
Red
great
Skelton,
music.
Jackie Gleason, everything. So I used to love, Grandpa Jones and just the comedy sketches, and because I like vaudeville type stuff. And then when they'd play, and they'd had great guests on, and I love guitar picking. I love good guitar picking and good singing. So after that, then I started getting into George Jones. I kind of tried to see him twice, and he canceled both times here in New York. So I didn't get to hear him, but he's absolutely George Jones, Patsy Cline, Dolly Parton. I used to watch like the Grand Ole Opry, they're on TV, and just the singing for me was so soulful, so soulful to me. So just the storytelling.
And what did your parents think about that? Because that was outside of their sphere. Or what did your mother think about that?
Well, my mom she never told me not to listen to anything. So I was listening to Led Zeppelin. I was listening to all kinds of, British rock and, Yes, and Procol Harum and King Crimson and all that stuff, going to concerts. You know, I saw Janis Joplin. She didn't ever tell me that's too loud, you know, turn it off. She never did that. So I was able to listen to everything that I wanted to listen to, and including she and I watched Hee Haw together. So, you know, she enjoyed it too. So.
Yeah, and I ask about this stuff because I want people to know about what comes next, because what comes next is a whole bunch of stuff before you were Catherine Russell, the jazz leader, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. And I feel like it makes you so well-rounded. And you were in New York and you were playing gigs were you doing gigs in the 70s? And what kind of gigs in New York were you doing then? And
well, in the 70s, it was a combination, the early 70s. I'm trying to think. No, I went to California in the early 70s because hippiedom was very attractive to me. I saw, you know, hippies sitting in at Stanford when I was, you know, watching the 6 o'clock news in the 60s during Vietnam. And I just thought, I'm going to California. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I love rock and roll and I want to go. So I joined a commune, which was not give up all your you know, it wasn't like a cult, but it was you know, it was a commune where I moved into one of the houses in Brooklyn when I was at Music and Art High School. And then went out to California to another one of their houses, and then finished my high school and went to part of my college, you know, out there. So that was the early 70s. Then I wanted to go to acting school. You know, I just felt like I needed to learn how to express myself, you know. And so I tried out for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts out there, got in, and then that's how I got back to New York in 1977. So the late 70s, I was in acting school. So I didn't actually start working until the early 80s, you know, so which started with, you know, club dates, weddings, anything that I could do. And then I started, after that, I started doing sessions. So I started doing Tina Turner sound-alike sessions and, you know, the karaoke. There was a lot of, that might have been later, but there was a lot of session work, you know, at those days for songwriters trying to demo their tunes. So that's how I was paying my bills in the early 80s. And then in the mid 80s, then I started getting out into the clubs and meeting everybody. That's when I started working around town.
yeah, and boy, it was quick for you. Once you kind of got in there with Vivino and all those guys, and you started to, they were like, oh, her. And all of a sudden you were off and running, like the early 90s, right? Things started getting really busy.
Yeah, the late 80s with Jimmy, that started out actually at Catch a Rising Star Comedy Club,
Oh, wow.
where a couple of those guys, Kevin Bentz, Gary Gold, some of those guys were in the band that would play on and off the comics, you know. And so I got a job through another drummer at Catch a Rising Star singing in between comics. And so then Gary said to me, you know, I'm in another band up the road there a piece, and I think you should come and sing because they probably like you there. So just come and sing some blues and stuff like that. So that's how that started. So I went in and sat in with them, and I had met Jimmy before doing a South Street Seaport gig with Joan Osborne back in 1985. He was leading that band. So it was kind of like then things started to kind of weave together. So then after I sang, I went a couple of weeks and sat in with the Little Big Band, which is the one that Jimmy was heading. And he said, well, come back because I'm going to try to get some money for you, you know, if you come back. And so I did that. And then it turns out that Phoebe Snow and Donald Fagen and all these other folks were showing up. And then one night I ended up on stage with Donald Fagen next to me. And I really could, you know, the music was loud. I was just hollering. I didn't really hear what I was doing that well or anything, but after that, he ended up hiring me for the Rock and Soul review. So
That's
then
right.
that was, huh?
1992, right?
Yeah, that was, so before that, he had been doing Rock and Soul gigs before the tour. So I started working with him in like 90, 89, 90. And then the official Rock and Soul tour happened in 92, which turned later into Steely Dan in 93. So then the touring stuff actually started happening then regularly.
Was he? And how did you feel about that music? And you went on to record with him on Kamakiria.
Yeah.
And that album
Yeah.
feels so tucked in. It feels kind of like the opposite of the music of all this music you've been listening to, in a way, because it was, I mean, it was soul-based, but it was very kind of controlled, you know?
Yeah, it was controlled, but I really, I was a fan of the music anyway, and I really loved I'm a, Virgo, and I like precision. I like that order, which is a good and bad news, but, I liked it was really going to school for me in the studio. So I really enjoyed harmonizing and getting stuff in the pocket that he wanted. So you think it's in the pocket, and then you go out into the control room and listen. It's like, no, we rushed that phrase a little bit. We rushed this. So I learned so much from doing that album and just working with him. After that, it's just that pocket, man. That Steely Dan pocket is the space in it.
Yeah.
Is really the school for me. So it was. I couldn't actually believe that I got to do that. I couldn't believe it. And just,
you were on fire. You had the Madonna sessions and Roseanne Cash and Grandmaster Flash.
Grandmaster Flash. Let me see. That was. I'm trying to. No, that was this from All Music Guide? I'm on a lot of stuff that I don't know if. Because I worked with Samantha Fox also, who was, and that was really the first stadium tours that I did. So that she was produced by not Grandmaster Flash, and I'm not thinking of the hip hop organization who made her, who produced her records. I want to have some fun, so that was, so yeah, I just can't think of the producers of that. But there was a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. At that, also, I was working with comedian Robert Klein, because I did sessions for Bob Stein, who was his musical director and has been for 30-something odd years. And so through demos with Bob, I got to work with Robert. So we were kind of comedy relief. He always had music in his shows too. So, I got to do HBO shows with him. And so it was a whole bunch of stuff.
And were you at this time, because your phone was starting to ring like crazy at this time, and were you starting to feel like, did you have any inkling that you wanted to be a solo artist, or you were just like, this is cool?
No, I was in an audition, because at that point I got a theatrical agent out of the gig at Catch a Rising Star, because agents, everybody from Jerry Seinfeld, Joy Behar, Susie Essman, Colin Quinn, you name them, Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, everybody was in there, Rodney Dangerfield. It was very exciting. So, but everybody did 15-minute slots. So that was a good place for agents to come in and see you, So I got a theatrical agent, and then did like 6 months of Big River, which was the only Broadway show I ever did, which was in 1987. Then after that, I was just auditioning for stuff around New York, and I was at an audition, and one of the other gals came in and said, I just got a call from Annie Lennox. And I thought, how does Now, how do you get a call from Alex? How does that happen? You know, I want to find out how that, I don't know how to do that, but I want to find out. That sounds good. How does that, you know? So eventually, you know, thank goodness things went in that direction, you know. But a solo career, you know, I had something way in the back of my mind, like maybe one day I could lead a band. I didn't know it, you know, but I kind of left it in the back of my mind because all I wanted to do was work. I just wanted to be able to make a living, you know, and do a variety of work and learn the road and learn how to, you know, so that didn't really, I just stored that somewhere.
And I'm trying to think about the motivations about stylistic choices and working on your craft. And were you thinking about the roles of your parents in this at all? Because your parents had done so much work. And did you think about sort of like how they made it, how different it was for you at the time?
All of that. I mean, you know, my mother used to tell me how, you know, difficult it was, especially touring in the South, you know. And, but she never wanted to be a band leader. Like my dad always wanted to be a band leader. My mother really didn't want to be a band leader. She always liked she said she wanted to always be a part of something bigger. So I was kind of listening to my mom and then listening to all of her colleagues, because she also got me involved in choral work when I was a teenager, doing Alvin Ailey's Revelations, you know, so I was in the chorus of that for a little while. So I was around her colleagues and her opera friends and her, you know, and they talk about, and I just look and see, okay, how'd that person do it? And then you had like Genya Ravon, like people like that, you know, just all these, how did the women do it, like the leaders, you know? And I thought, well, I don't know, but one thing is you got to be organized. You know, you have to keep a level head. You have to deal with other people's emotional, you know, roller coasters and different things like that. You want everything to go smoothly. So from the road, just from being on the road and watching how tour managers dealt with people, how some people are more even-tempered than other people. Some people get mad when they can't eat at a certain time. Some people don't have people, take care of themselves differently. So really, that came from me just observing myself. Like, how am I going to take care of myself too? You know, how do you get along with a lot of people over several months at a time in close quarters and things like that? So, you know, that was really, and then my mother used to just say, just don't sweat the small stuff. Don't get hung up in other people's little drama and things like that. So that was very valuable lesson. You know?
That road bubble can change people.
Yeah, fast.
By the way, in 1995, you sang 3 nights with Al Kooper and the Recuperators at the Bottom Line and Uptown Horns, and I'm almost positive I was there at that gig, because I definitely saw Al Kooper, and maybe Brian Delaney, who's watching this, was also there. Yeah,
that was Al's 50th.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy Vivino, who has been my musical daddy, really, my rock and roll father. He's gotten me everything I've connected with is somehow come through Jimmy. And so we were doing, you know, a bunch of different gigs with Al. And so myself and Cheryl Marshall were hired just to be the 2 backup singers for that, which was thrilling because Child is Father to the Man.
Ooh,
was just, you know, I loved that album. And just to be in the middle of that and just hear that, man, I just couldn't believe that I got to do that. You know, of course, the second night it snowed. I don't know when you went, but it was Yeah, it was a big snowstorm, and everybody got there. Yeah, audience showed up. It's New York. People aren't gonna, it was cool, But man,
Yeah.
that was such a great experience. It was really great.
And then right after that, I think, was when you were touring with Steely again, or had you toured with them before? Because you did a Live in America.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the year. What'd you say the year was of the Al Kooper 50th?
Al Kooper was 95, but Live in
95.
America came out in 95. So maybe you'd already done the touring.
Yeah, yes, because I did Steely Dan 93 to 95. And then in 96, they changed the girls and they changed the horns. And, that's when Carolyn Lenhart, Michael Lenhart, they changed everybody at that point.
Yeah.
So we had already done those shows by then.
But it didn't bother you because you were still busy, and I think you went on to tour with Cindy? Or just
Yes, I was touring. Well, all at the same time. I toured with Cyndi Lauper 93 to 97. So, now that I think about it, that was a lot of road time. I don't even remember what.
I was going to ask you how much road time.
I don't even remember, and then, and with both bands, I mean, I got to go to Asia for the first time, got to go to Japan a lot, and because she was so popular, and she's still very popular in Japan, so we were going every year, going for like 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks everywhere. And right, that was a whole lot of road time. And then after that, you're helping me remember now, because I don't.
And some Paul Simon too, right?
Yes, and that was in New York. That was at the theater next to Madison Square Garden. So I didn't tour with him, but we did a month of Simon and Garfunkel in 93. So with Simon and Garfunkel was all the things that he had done. So Simon and Garfunkel, the Brazilians and the Africans, so there was a section with all the Brazilians, Ciro Baptista and all of those cats. And then the African band, all the Africans that he was working with. And then the Mighty Clouds of Joy section, which is the section that I was in. So myself, Phoebe Snow, and Ulla Hedwig were the backup singers. I mean, So I have a photo with the four of us. I have a little photo with the four of us in it, sitting on the stage.
And I talked to Spinoza last weekend. He confirmed again what people widely know, that Paul is quite particular about stuff.
Yeah, I actually those tours went into each other because I was out with Steely Dan, got the call to go into Paul Simon, and I hadn't finished the Steely Dan tour, so I don't know if I should be saying this, but I had to sub out. I hate saying this, but a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, went in for me. Curtis King went in for me for the end, because I got the call and I said, well, what am I going to do? And so I asked one of our tour managers or something, and then he said, well, go talk to Donald and Walter and see what they say. As long as you're covered, then maybe they'll let you go, because I had to go to Paul Simon's house, and audition for him. So Curtis, who had been on the road, he was in and out anyway, knew the material, so he was able to go in and sing the low part, which I was singing at that point, for the last week or whatever it was, last few gigs. So it was my birthday, I remember, and they had sent like this limousine, this white stretch limo for me to go to the airport. So the tour bus, I said, bye, everybody. The tour bus went that way, and I went this way within this white limo by myself to the airport. And then got off the plane and went right to Paul Simon's apartment, auditioned for him. Thank God, got the gig. And then I sang Slip Sliding Away with him. And then we sang, I can't remember what else we sang, but we were singing with the Mighty Clouds of Joy. And then Phoebe, did her thing with him. So that was 30-something performances, in this incredible group. And yes, Paul Simon would say, you know, in rehearsal, we'd spend 3 hours on a chorus of a song, say. And then he'd say, I don't like it. It's under rehearsed. Wow. We go on to something else.
Wow.
But, you know, yeah, Chris Bodie was in the band at that point. Michael Brecker. It was amazing. Oof. So, yeah, he's now you think like Donald Fagen, Donald and Walter are particular. They have the reputation of that. But Paul Simon you go, yeah, man, it's another level. You go, and he was cool, but you know, you go over something a lot, and if he wasn't feeling it, and there was nothing you could do. It's out of the show. Wow. You just go on to something else.
Wow.
Try to get that right, you know.
But that steeled you. I'm sure that steeled you to be a better participant in under artists like that, you know, and taught you ways of negotiating that in your head and not getting freaked out. Just the idea, I still want to ask about the idea of auditioning for Paul Simon in his apartment. What was that about? How did you prepare for that?
You can't. I couldn't, and I can't tell you. We probably sang Slip Sliding Away because I was already a fan of the music and I was familiar with the tune. And he just probably wanted to hear how I was going to harmonize with him, or if I could harmonize or whatever, because, you know, he didn't know me, you know. But it went, I mean, you know, you go into this iconic man's house. It's kind of like I got to be around Bob Dylan one time, too. You know, you go in their space and you realize, oh, yeah, this person is, yeah. This person is established, iconic, you know, original artwork. I mean, original artwork, like just ridiculous, you know. And I just said to him, I said, like, because I was like, no, you know, Paul Simon. And I said, wow, you know, if I had all this, I would never leave the house. You know, I said something stupid like that. And he says, well, you can't stay home all the time, he said to me. But I was looking around his apartment like, what? You know? So, you know, he's very, very nice. And he's nice to the point where I saw him years later and he walked right up to me and say, hi, Kathleen. So he's like that. Like, he doesn't forget you. He's not somebody that, oh, you know, you have to meet every time you see him. He remembers you.
That's so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. And then you came back out of that and you did more dates with Cindy, or at least you did a record with Cindy, right? I'm looking at my notes here.
Yeah. We toured. I toured with her for 4 years, and then in the middle of that somewhere, she did a remake of Girls Just Want to Have Fun, which I'm on. So the 12 Deadly Sins album is the one that I'm on, and then we wrote a song together, actually, which wasn't on any. Maybe it was on.
It was.
Yeah, Hot Gets a Little Cold, and so we, you know, I'm not really a songwriter, but I thought, she asked me, and I thought, well, I'm not going to say no. I have to try it. I got to try, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, she's so good that she's able to, you know, good songwriting. People are able to say, okay, give me a situation, and then write a whole song around that. You can just tell them one thing, and then they see the pictures and they just write them down, and then you end up with a tune.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. You know, it's amazing to me.
Yeah. So you've done now these 3 major artists, pretty immersive artist tours and recordings, and you were kind of living this 20 feet from stardom. In fact, I don't know why you weren't included in that film.
I knew everybody in it, pretty much.
I know. You were as much of a peer of theirs as anybody. You know, and you did all these recordings in 2000, and you know, Dr. John and all these other recordings.
Yeah.
Brothers. Gloria
the
Estefan.
yeah, Gloria. Yeah, I was working for a producer at that point. Diodato did a lot of producing also. So there were producers that would call us in. So I was working. I got to work with most of the people that worked with Luther Vandross, who were the top backing singers. All those people were in 20 Feet from Stardom. Those were the top.
Yeah.
That was the grade A backing singer. You don't get better than that. So if I show up in a session and see them, I said, okay, good. I'm good. Good. I'm in the right, I've done something right, to be singing with these folks. And they knew everything. So they would teach you, they would teach me, phrasing. They'd teach me how to cut off. Okay, we're going to do this now. You're going to add vibrato now. No, this is straight tone now. And no, put a little more breath in that. So it was great school, And so at that point, there were a lot of different producers doing a lot of sessions, So session work was I'm so happy that I was able to get in on that too, in between the road gigs, just a plentiful session work and just learning through that. I didn't see a lot of the I never met Gloria Estefan. She wasn't in the studio, but it was really fun to do all of these Chemical Brothers. I did a few things for their albums, and I did like disco sessions, all kinds of stuff. Did a hollering and all kinds of different sessions where it'd just be me doing 20 voices and different things. So yeah, that's how
I put on that Holmes Brothers record just today. I was listening to a lot of stuff you've been on this morning, and I heard you immediately. I was like, that's Cat. Just the second the first track I played, I was like, oh, that's Cat right there. Because your voice is so distinctive and beautiful. And you were doing all these sessions in right around 2000, and you look at all those credits around 2000, 2001, and then 2002, you get the call to work with Bowie. How did that come about?
Well, now also in that time period, I was teaching at Berklee College of Music. And I was also on the road with Vonda Shepherd. So we remember Vonda Shepherd from the TV show. So she was doing all the incidental music. Tell me the name of that show, though. I'm blanking on the name of that.
I don't know if I have
It's a big show. Huge show. Got to look it up. But so she was touring at that point, and her drummer, was Pete Thomas, one of the Elvis Costello's imposters, So in there, I'm still meeting all these like really cool individuals. So then now going back to 1996, I was called to work with Jane Siberry, who was a Canadian singer-songwriter. For people that don't know, she's a brilliant singer-songwriter. And by Peter Keyswalter, who was her MD at the time. And so we did some shows at the Bottom Line, and Gail Ann Dorsey was singing and I believe playing bass. I want to get this right, but it was the first time that I had met Gail. And so when David was looking for someone to play simple parts on instruments and sing backup, Gail thought of me. And so then at the same time, Elvis was putting his band back together, putting the Imposters back together or something like that at that point. So I asked Pete Thomas, I said, what do you think I should do? He said, well, you have to work with David Bowie. You can't, are you crazy? You'll kick yourself for the rest of your life. You have to. So then I had to, give my notice, with Vonda and say, I have to do that. So, so then I get the job. I don't have to go audition for him. You know, he trusts Gail Ann's judgment in that. He asked her, well, who do you think you guys should use? And she said me, and he said, okay, I trust you. So the first time I laid my eyes, and I was also a big fan of David Bowie. I mean, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust was a life changer for me. So they gave us like the first, Jerry Leonard was the MD, so he gave us like the first 5 tunes that we work on, right? And then you have to have those ready for the first rehearsal. So I get into rehearsal, you know, and there's like this big keyboard rig, you know, like the keyboard rig of your dreams, you know, like all the 2 keyboards and a module and all this stuff. And, you know, and I thought, okay, you know, I'll play the parts on here. So he just trusted that you go home and hear what you hear, you learn the stuff. And then he had 2 keyboard programmers. So I'd stay after rehearsals and work with them on getting the sounds that I needed to get in the octaves, splitting up the keyboard like you've done for me, splitting the keyboard. Okay, I need this to middle C, and then I need this sound up here. And so that's how I actually, you know, got acquainted with doing that. But the first rehearsal, going back, David walked in to, we rehearsed at CMS, so when it was in Manhattan. So David walked in to rehearsal, and we rehearsed for 2 or 3 months, you know, 6 days a week. It was a job. Wow. And he walked in, and I just thought, it's David Bowie. And then he came right over to me, because I'm in the back line, you know, I'm in the back in the corner with all my stuff. And he said, thank you for doing this. And I said, you know, trying to catch my breath, I said, you know, thank you. I don't know what I said, actually, but I was just like I am right now. I just couldn't even believe that this person was human. And I actually couldn't believe it for the whole 2 tours I did with him. I'd look at him singing Ziggy Stardust, and I'd say, that's David Bowie. Like, you know, how did this happen? You know, and he was the greatest. He was just the greatest. The band was a collaboration. So he never told anybody what to do. He suggests, and then we try things. And if stuff didn't work, he'd say, okay, we, you know, throw it out and try something else, you know. And then if he liked it, he'd say, good. That's good and loud. Good. Good and loud. So it was amazing, man. The band was a family. We were on the road for a year. I mean, the second tour was a year long. So his last tour. So, you know, everybody took care of each other.
Yeah. And you were basically on the last tour.
I was on his last 2 tours, last 2 world tours.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you were talking, and I was going to ask something about that. Oh, yes, I remember. You had been playing mandolin before with Cindy.
Yeah, I played some mandolin with Cindy, and Larry Campbell was in the band at that point, and which is where I met him. And you know, my grandfather, my mother's father, had all these instruments in the house when I was growing up. So we had a guitar, we had a mandolin, we had violin, you know, piano, Hammond organ, we had everything. So I was trying to play everything, you know. And so I picked up his little mandolin when I was like 10, and I was just trying to do something on it, you know. And then I liked the sound of it. So when I moved out to California, I was saying that I was living in the commune. And so when I was going to Sonoma State College, now it's Sonoma State University, it was a little college at that point. And then I met musicians that had a string band, you know, so we'd play kind of Western swing stuff. And so that enabled me to start chunking away on the mandolin and just learning chords. So actually when I was a teenager, I started doing that. And then I heard traditional Irish music for the first time, traditional Irish and traditional old-timey American music, which also changed my life. And I said, wow, the penny whistle and the violins and concertina accordion, everybody playing these great melodies all together, and they swing, and then I said, man, I got to get some more of that. So then I had an Irish teacher. He played mandola. His name was Max. And I never knew his last name, but he lived in the woods, you know, back in Northern California. So he taught me. That's how I got acquainted with fiddle tunes.
Wow.
And so from there, I've always had a mandolin. I still, you know, have my mandolin and play once in a while. So that's how I got to eventually start playing with Cindy.
Yeah, and then Cindy, and then David, and playing keyboard and mandolin. And maybe if you hadn't been playing those instruments, maybe you wouldn't have gotten that call.
Yeah, being able to hear parts and being able to pick up parts, because I love doing that. I love doing that. Just hearing all the notes in something and being able to bring that to a band and be able to be a part of a band that way is thrilling. I love it. So, you know, and sometimes I wouldn't even be singing. I'd just be playing, which was like the, you know,
Yeah.
you know, I just get to play. That's great, you know. So, you know, and then you have to learn, which I will forever be learning, you know, how to, the technical part, you know, which you help me with, you know, which is the how to the amplifier and the volume and how to do all of that stuff, you know, which is cool, you know.
That's not the important part, though. You know? So after this, after Bowie stopped touring, you know, we all know that he stopped touring in 2004, and you looked around and you said, "What do I do?" when Paul so smartly suggested that you make a jazz record? And I can't imagine in 2005 going, "Yeah, I've been touring with a bunch of pop and rock stars. I'll make a jazz record."
You know, it was. He said, "Well, there's one thing you haven't done, and that's make your own albums." And I said, "Oh, but I'm perfectly happy doing what I'm doing, really." And he said, "Yeah, give me, you know, 14 tunes. I got a guy and, you know, friend of mine out in Illinois with a studio. He'll put the band together for you. We're going to go out there." So actually, the vision, the initial thing was a string swing band, like Dan Hicks. Like I wanted to do swing fun tunes, but with strings. And then that just kind of turned into, so Stuart Rosenberg, who was the producer who had the studio, plays mandolin and violin. So that's why those instruments and accordion are on the first album, you know, so because that's kind of what I was trying to go for, you know, something that swings, but I didn't know what I was trying to go for, but I like the sound of swinging strings, you know, and I'd seen Dan Hicks a lot, you know, in my life. I loved his hot licks. And so we tried to do that, and then it kind of morphed into what songs do I know that swing that I like? So that's what happened. You know, that's why it turned into kind of a jazz-oriented thing, because it's how do we do something that is different than what I've been doing, and that I can work till I'm 100 years old, you know, and still do that. So
and kill it.
It was that. It was as much a practical decision, you know, because
but, you know, it doesn't sound like that. And the thing I love about your singing and your musicality is it always feels so authentic. Like when you're singing rock and roll, and for anybody who hasn't seen Kat singing rock and roll, you should just look around on the web for that, because if you just know her as a jazz singer and then you see her sing rock and roll, you're going to fall over in your chair, because you completely go in there all the way.
It's fun. I mean, it's fun. You know how much fun it is for me. I mean, it's just because initially that's really what I wanted to do. But there really wasn't a lot of room for Black women in rock and roll. So I looked around and I said, who do I see around me who's sick? Nobody. No Black women in rock and roll. Tina Turner was the closest, and that wasn't really rock and roll. She was a rock and roll singer, but it was pop music, or it was soul music, or some other kind of music. And then there was a woman whose name escapes me, but the group was Skunk and Nancy, and that was and they were back in the 90s, and that was a hard rock project, and she was amazing, gorgeous and amazing, and just rock through and through. And the next album she made was a straight pop album, Yeah. So, I wasn't really seeing myself making it like that. So, you gotta, get your rock and roll where you can get it. And I incorporate, rhythm and blues and into what I do. So it's kind of a mix, and which I'll never give rock and roll up as long as I can do it with energy, and because it's just so cleansing to me. It's cleansing, man. It's just invigorating and cleansing, and
But your own records are so swinging, and I love the fact that you kind of took control of your records and are producing them with Paul, and they really feel like this is your stamp and your thing, and it feels so on brand for you.
It took time, it takes time. First couple, took time to say, oh, okay, what do I want? Now, the first couple albums, Toshi Regan told me this, she and I got mad at the time, but she said, no, the first one or two, you're learning how to make albums. That's what you're doing. You're going in there and you learn. I was like, no, I spent all this money. No, you got to learn how to do it. And then I just said, well, I could bring in, the last outside producer I worked with, which was great to work with him, was Larry Campbell. He produced my second album. And it was great, really great to work with him because he's fabulous. And then after that, I just said, well, who else knows me? Who else is going to be able to help me with the vision and the thing that I'm hearing in my head, and the way I want the music to sound, and the kind of the records that I really listen to, the rhythm and blues and jazz records from the 40s and 50s, blues records from the 20s, swing records from the 30s and 40s. And so we just started going in and building the team of arrangers and people who could help me with these visions. So this is what we've been doing since album 3, so
it really and these last two records, congratulations, both Grammy nominated.
Thank you very much.
And I listened to a little bit of Alone Together today, and it feels like, when did you leave heaven? You're kind of tipping your hat to those early country swing roots a little bit. That's great. Thank you. It's if I could make that Ray Charles country album that he did, is just a classic, Yeah. It's a combination of that. Well, that's cool, man. I'm glad that you heard that out of it. I have a long list of genres that before I leave this world that I'd love to cover, but that was really Little Jimmy Scott inspired. And I would love a gig, but I think that Mark Shane is great on all these records, and you started working with him on your second record, right? And he's been your guy.
Yeah. Well, but there are a lot of guys, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, but he sounds great, and you guys work really well together.
Yeah, he swings and he's great, and he's just very solid, and he leaves a lot of space too. So he never plays on my melody. He's always harmonizing with me. Wherever I go, he's harmonizing with me. We've done duo gigs together too, a lot of duo gigs, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but who knows the way things are now, you know, and I can start thinking about, I got a lot of time to think. So I'm thinking about and conceiving what I'm going to record next.
So,
so
I know we're starting to run out of time, and I'm so gracious of you to jump on social media here and show your face when I know a lot of people are busy and don't want to be bothered with it, which I appreciate it. But you know, you're always aware. I know you're really aware of other music that's happening. And what do you think for a young artist starting out? What do you think for somebody to make a career even a fraction of what you've done, and somebody to look forward and have some hope and assess their situation? And you know,
I've also been listening to webcasts and, you know, a few things since we've been in this situation, and young people say the same thing. It's connections, making connections, somehow showing up. It's the same thing that everybody that I know did, which was show up everywhere you can, talk to everybody you can, sing for everybody you can, harmonize with everybody you can, and 99% of the next step is showing up. And you know, showing up enthusiastic, showing up, having your homework, you know, done as much as possible, being as prepared as possible, and you know, getting along with people and just making friends and connections, because I have the same friends and colleagues now that I had 30, almost 40 years ago. So this is what I would say. And you know, my students are actually doing that. They made demos, and now you have the social media platform where you can record a tune and put it up for people to, you know, to view. Students of mine have YouTube channels. They've gone in, they've shot videos, you know, things like that. So it seems today like as much as people can see you is a good thing. We didn't have all that, so we you know, going out in person was the only way we could do it. So now, you know, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, but now you have now you have even more opportunities, you know. And it seems it's good for young folks. They like, you know, in the selfie age and in the filming yourself age, young people are not afraid to do that. So take advantage of that.
Yeah.
You know, I have to get used to it personally, but you know, I have a student who, she just said, "Oh, I'm gonna," and she sent me something, you know, because now they've been studying virtually, so she had to turn in a few things. And so she sent them to me, you know, said, "I got to turn this in for another class. What do you think of it?" So then I critique it. And it's like, this is great, man. This could have been on MTV 30 years ago. You know, the technology is great. So, you know, but you can't get out there, get yourself out there as in many ways, as many ways as you can.
Well, thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you.
What a pleasure.
I really appreciate it, Henry.
All right, take care of yourself.
Okay, you too. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Right Key. If you enjoyed the episode, there's a lot more coming. Please click the subscribe and like buttons below. If you want to know more about me or our guests, you can find lots of information in the link just below the video. See you next time.